All right. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
First, I want to thank you for coming and spending some time with us here at Construction Robotics. We're a huge fan of the work that you do down in the Carolinas and just across the country for the industry as a whole. So thanks for spending some time with us.
Yes, sir.
So I want to cover a couple things today, right? So the first thing is we'll talk a little bit about background, share some of our background in construction robotics, some of your background, and then really we're a technology company at our core, but one of our core values is this concept of preserving the trades through technology, right? So we're a technology company, but we want to see the trades, and particularly masonry, succeed, grow, thrive in the future. And so I want to talk a little bit about your experience with students, where the industry's at today and where we see it going in the future, because I think that's a fun conversation, and it's both educational for potentially other people in the industry, but even our team here to understand some different perspectives on where the industry's going and the people that are coming into the trade and how this industry will evolve going forward when it comes to the people. So I'd love to start with a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into kind of construction robotics, how we ended up where we are, and then we'll kind of come together from there. So
sounds good. Thanks, Scott, for having me. So I've got a unique background. I started in a high school masonry class in 1989 in a little small town called Mount Pleasant, North Carolina. And I'm sure there's a Mount Pleasant everywhere. There's one down in South Carolina. It's a knockoff. It's not the real thing like the one in North Carolina. But I'm sure there's one everywhere.
Yeah.
But that little small town still to this day has one stoplight. And that's where I grew up. That was my hometown. And the instructor that I had in high school was a rock star. He was phenomenal. He got me excited about the trade. Nobody in my family was a mason. Nobody. I took the class because a couple of my buddies said, hey, if you work real hard, the instructor will take you to the store on Friday and he'll buy you a Coca-Cola and a pack of nabs. And in North Carolina, a pack of nabs is a pack of crackers. And so we did. We worked hard all week, and on Friday he would throw us in the back of a pickup truck, and we would drive about 5 miles to the store, and he would buy everybody a pack of nabs and a Coca-Cola. So it was a good class. The English class, my English instructor never did that for us. Math never, that was the only class that I could actually put my hands on what we were doing, enjoy it, and then get rewarded for that, so it was fun. So fast forward, I was very successful in that class coming through high school. I graduated in 1993 and went to work full-time right in the trade. And I had my first professional mentor in the trade was Sam McGee.
Yeah. And
Sam McGee was phenomenal. He took me under his wing. He recruited me out of the high school program, but then he took me under his wing and showed me a lot of stuff. So I was very lucky in my career to have not only my instructor who got me started, but then have a professional mentor that got me on the right path when I graduated high school. And so fast forward, 2008, the economy, I don't know if you remember how fun the economy was in 2008.
Yep.
And the instructor that I had in high school called me and he said, hey, I'm retiring. And I didn't think much of it. I thought he was, no telling what he drank that night. I didn't know. I said, I don't believe that. And so about another week went by and he called me back. He said, I called you and told you I was retiring. You need to apply. I said, are you kidding? I said, do you not remember me in high school? I was terrible. The only thing I loved was your class.
Yeah.
The other classes, I was terrible. He said, that's why you'll be an excellent instructor. You'll understand those students that are walking in your door because they were you 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So all that being said, he got me talked into applying. I never filled out an application in my life. And
really?
So luckily my wife, she's really smart. She got all that done for me. And long story short, I interviewed for the job and got the job. And so I taught for 8 years. And that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. I've been in industry for a long time. Then I went back to teaching masonry in a high school program where I learned it. I was able to introduce a lot of good young men to the trade and get them excited, and multiple are in the trade flourishing right now.
Yeah.
So that being said, it taught me a lot. And then in 2017, the North Carolina Masonry Contractor Association came after me. They had a vision of what they wanted to do with the association and how they wanted to move forward on how we promote masonry to our youth and the impact that we're able to make with all the programs that we have statewide. So went to work for the association, and then in 2021, into 2021, 2022, Lynn Nash was our executive director. He decided he wanted to do this cuss word called retire. And so he retired on me, and now I do what I was doing and what Lynn was doing. So it's a great thing. So so that gives you a little bit of background about how I've came through the industry and the different paths that I've saw. I've worked, with a lightweight aggregate company. I've helped them through the summers. I've been in a lot of areas, so I've got to meet a lot of good people in our industry across the nation. So it's been fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. Love to hear the backstory and kind of how you ended up where you are. Teaching, you could tell, is just part of your core, right? I mean, you watched just how you interact with even our team working with the mule out there. I mean, is that something you've always known, or you've kind of discovered that passion along the way?
That's something I had to learn.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I started teaching, I had no diploma, college education, no teaching degree, nothing. And my instructor that morning, Doug Dry, he had a key ring that was about this big around, and it was this line with keys. Now, this is 0464, that's the back gate. This is F123, it fits this door here. And he went all the way through every key. And then about that time at 7:10, the bell rang, 7:10 a.m., the bell rang for school to start. And when the bell rang, he looked at me and he handed me the keys. He said, "Ready or not, here they come." And that was the training I had to be a masonry instructor.
Yeah.
So that being said, coming through the program, I knew how he set up the training and how he really modeled. And so I tried to do a lot of what I learned when I came through the program, and then I learned a lot on my own.
Yeah.
A lot of times the best way to learn is to do it and learn from your mistakes and what can impact students better the next cycle if you change this way you're teaching. And so all that being said, we've got a lot of things that we're working on nationwide. NCMCA has been great. We've partnered up with them. We're working on a lot of instructor certifications, meaning where I can get a guy off the job site and not have to go through lateral entry process like I did to become a teaching, get a teaching certificate. So we're doing a lot of good things that I hope will help our industry as a whole nationwide.
Yeah.
That's my goal. My goal is to see us grow as an industry. And I believe if we get the right path, by being in the field for so long and then working in the educational realm for 8 years, it showed me a lot of disconnects that we had. Yep. And that allows me to now bring those together in true programs that work for us as an industry. Number one, for the student we impact and get them coming to it. That's great. I was that student. All right. But number two, make it easier for the instructor. Get his requirements where he can live with it. Number three, our industry, us. We are impacted and we benefit from that student coming through and getting started in our trade. Yeah. So it's a win-win for all of us.
Yeah, and it for us, I think that what you guys do from a training recruitment standpoint, I mean that is the future of the industry, right? We have immense respect and just love all of that and want to be a part of it and contribute as much as we can. I think for our technology is there as the next generation tool for the trades, right? And so we want to be part of that. We want to learn. We want to we want the industry to continue to thrive. And so I want to talk a little bit more about students and the future students, but I guess let's shift. And you had a chance to come spend a day with us here at Construction Robotics, play with the mule. I want to start by let's talk about the mule a little bit, feedback, and then I want to jump back into the students. So you got a chance to play with the mule hands-on. What are your initial thoughts?
I enjoyed it. This was my first training session. We've used the mule to highlight, especially to our youth, but we always do it in a dry stack setting.
Yeah.
So we actually mixed up live mortar. Let's put it in the real world application realm.
Yeah.
So yesterday it was very fun. Yeah. Was able to lay multiple block 8832s. I come up with some thoughts. I shared them with your team. Hey, what if we did this? What if, and that's how I'm always thinking.
Yeah.
How can we impact and make things smoother and better for the people in the field, which is who we're naturally wanting to benefit from it.
100%. And I think we thrive on that. I mean, we love the feedback from the industry. I think that, we launched the Mule initially back in 2018. It's been out there a lot of years. And then just this last year, we launched the MZ100, which is what you had a chance to play with today, our battery operated version of the Mule. And, that Mule was designed with years of feedback from masons, right? Being in the field, listening to what they say, what they like, what they don't like. And so we were able to design that tool. And, we know we're not done, right? It's going to continue to improve. We want to keep hearing feedback, just the little details like you talked about, how we can continue to make it better and easier for people to use. That means so much to us, and we're going to incorporate, that feedback and keep making it better. So, where do you see this technology fitting, right? So you're dealing with students every day. Where do you see this technology as a piece of the future of the industry? How do you see that fits in?
I see it an integral part of the future of the industry, because now our youth, they're more technology based.
Yeah.
When I came through school, we had one computer, and it was in the front office, and the monitor was that deep, that wide.
Yeah, I love looking at those old ones, especially now because the computing power that you have here, right? It's
so
amazing.
That being said, we had, and this is back in the old days, in the early 80s, we had an Atari.
Yep.
And that was the only thing we had. We had an Atari. We played Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, and we had a good time.
Yeah.
Now you look at the youth, and when I would have students, their smartphones, and I say, all right, Google this, get your Google device out and Google this, and I try to have fun with them and let them use, hey, I want you to look this up. How many chimneys does the Biltmore estate have on? And just give them something off the wall. How many brick? Can anybody in here tell me how many brick are in the Biltmore estate? Oh my God, 1.3 million. And well, how many did it take to finish it? Let me ask you that. And I would pick with them, and I Google it, and they'd get on. So I think getting them involved in technology along with the trade is going to be very impactful.
Yeah.
Because they're a generation that is used to technology.
Yep.
Where the generation when I came in, we were not. So integrating both of those together and teaching the youth, we do have a lot of new equipment that can make this job a heck of a lot easier.
Yep. And
it will benefit you in the long run, rather than like I was taught, hey, that's a 75% solid. Pick it up. Let's see what you got, boy.
Right.
Now we've got, hey, this is Mule. It's going to help you. It's going to take all the lifting off of you and all the required strength that you would need to manhandle something.
Yeah.
Now you can finesse the unit into place. It's going to do all the lifting for you.
Yeah.
So you still got to teach them the trade and the craft. And this is not taking a mason's place, but it's allowing that mason to not have the burden of the weight of the unit.
Yeah.
And still use the craft that he has and the skill set he has to make it happen.
Yeah, and I appreciate you talking about that, because I mean that's one of the, I think, core principles, right? Is we want to, let that craft still exist, let that craft grow, but try to relieve the strain. And then, in conjunction, now that we can make that block weightless, it opens up some interesting opportunities for the industry, like 32-inch block, like thinking about material differently, like planning your job differently, right? Because the core benefit of the Mule, from our perspective, obviously is health and safety, right? Preserving the backs and bodies of the people that spend their life out there in the field every day, building the beautiful buildings that we live and work in. But at the same time, we also recognize that productivity and, getting jobs done on schedule, all that's an important part. And so I think that one thing we also appreciate is that with the Mule, it opens up that opportunity. And so, from a productivity perspective within masonry, where does that fit into the overall picture of like how you train, how you educate, and just where, what the industry, what's important in the industry with regards to productivity and how that ties in?
So I'll speak a little bit on productivity. I used to teach my students, you're not going to be fast on day 1.
Yeah.
You're not going to be fast on day 300.
Yeah. I'm
going to teach you the proper way and the skill set needed, and the speed will naturally come over time. So what this does, and this is me looking at it as an older person that's been in the trade, and now I'm trying to get young people excited and promote the trade. This allows them to see that they can be productive without tearing themselves up to do so.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you a device. I'm going to teach you. We still have to spread. We got to butter. Everything's still got to face up. Everything's still got to be the same. But this is going to take that strain off of your body where you can do all that and be productive and go home and feel just as good as you did when you started that morning at work.
Yeah, and hopefully, keep going throughout the day, kind of allow you to think about that
Exactly.
job a little bit differently.
You see and we used to watch it in cycles. On Monday, everybody comes in, man, they're rocking and roaring. They feel good.
Yeah.
They're prepped
They're
up, ready to
roll,
go.
yeah,
They
yeah.
had a good, you guys pull for the Bills. The Bills may have beat the Lions on Sunday. They come in all pumped up.
That's right.
But then by Friday, the wind's out of them,
Yeah.
because they've had to struggle. And so you watch your productivity as it scales through the week, and everybody anticipates that. But what if we didn't have to anticipate that decline in productivity as the week progressed?
Yeah.
What if we saw a steadiness when Monday was just as steady as Friday was?
Yep.
And then that would allow us to be more productive in how we actually can schedule, how we can estimate a job cost. So I was picking with the guys this morning. We were out there, and we were talking about some of the craftsmanship of the days past.
Yeah.
Some of the old projects that just blow your mind when you see, and they didn't have
incredible.
the technology or anything that we have. And I picked with them, and I told them the one thing they had that we don't have is time.
Yeah.
They had time. They have plenty of time, and we don't necessarily have that now.
No, I think it's almost like a cultural thing, right? Where everything is hurry up, right? Get more done with less. You got to find efficiencies everywhere, and it's just kind of, unfortunately, it's part of life nowadays, and that creates the stress. But that's the real stuff we're dealing with on job sites every day, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Pressure from GCs, pressure from owners, getting schedules done faster with less people, because finding people, retaining people, keeping them coming to work every day. These are all the real challenges they're dealing with every day. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So with students, right? You talked a little bit about the technology and the new students, and how do you find recruitment and getting people into the industry, and what are the things that are driving the future Masons that you're training and you're bringing in? What are the things that drive them? What excites them about masonry, and how do you find those students, and how do you bring them in?
That's a hard question to answer, and I'll give you my best answer I possibly can. Craziness. I want those students to see, and we have events in North Carolina, Masonry Ed Day. I want them to be hands-on.
Yeah.
If you have a career day and you're standing behind the table like we are now, and you're handing out a pamphlet, you've lost them.
Yeah,
they're
100%.
not going to. But if they touch what you're talking about, feel and experience it, and say, "Hey, I can do that. That was pretty cool. I like that. I've never." And if we have an event, I'll tell our students, when you leave me today, you're going to be A. I said, "How many's A?" And they'll say 1. I said, "That's correct. You'll be a block layer." Meaning you're going to lay a block today,
Yep.
and you're going to go home and you're going to tell your parents, "Well, I got 45 pamphlets from such and such, but hey, I laid a block today."
Yeah.
And I want you to carry that excitement home with you when you tell your parents about, "Hey, I'm a block layer. I laid a block today."
Yeah.
So I try to make everything that I do impact that student with this.
Yep.
And when I impact here, I impact here.
Yep.
So if that is possible with all of our events, and I tell our people and our vendors and the folks that come and help us, hands-on. Let's do all we can to impact hands-on. Meaning, when I've got your hands on something, I'm also building a relationship with you while I'm telling you and teaching you about that.
Yeah.
And that's what's been impactful for us is really trying to focus on getting that student hands-on and showing them the opportunity. And when I was teaching, I would tell every student I had in the class, "I've got a job for everybody in here."
Yep.
Hey, you're good at math. Man, I need an estimator. I'm terrible. Hey, you can drive pretty doggone good. I need an equipment operator.
Yeah.
So I would try to have something that fit what I knew they liked. And you got to get to know that student and build that relationship to build that connection.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. And I think we live in a world where I think so oftentimes people are pushing to go to higher education or go into software development or things like that. But at the same time, we live in a world that construction is still one of the major industries in the world, and we're building buildings every day. And so we need people that that love working with their hands, that love being, working outside, that love building buildings, the pride that comes with being able to look at a building when it's done, saying, hey, I built that, I was a part of that. We got to find those people, we got to keep them in the industry, and we got to keep them engaged. And so, for us, we love going to those events. We love being part of the recruitment, and we love having the mule there, because there's nothing better. I mean, we've been to state fairs, we've been to events all over the country, and there's nothing better than, having a mason come up with his little kids, and he's showing them, oh, look at him doing this, and then the little kids lifting a 75-pound 32-inch block up over his head with the mule, and being like, oh, putting it in place. I love that. Because I think it starts to show, that as we merge technology with the future workforce, that it's going to open up the opportunity for people of all different shapes, sizes, men, women. Doesn't matter. You don't need to be an ex-linebacker that can lift a 50 or 80-pound block over your head all day long. But anybody can come into the trade that wants to that has that pride, that wants to work with their hands, that wants to have that to demonstrate the skill, the craft, the artwork with it. So it's fun for us to be part of those too, but immense respect for what you do in bringing people into the trades. Do you feel like, overall that, the number of people we're getting into the trades, I mean, is there enough people coming in? Is there a lot more work we need to do to get more people in? Do you feel like there's, what does that picture look like as a whole? And probably your market, you have a perspective on, but then also you probably even have a perspective on the rest of the country too, to some level.
I try to,
Yeah.
And I'll never be satisfied that we've got enough.
Of course, yeah.
And I told my association, the North Carolina Masonry Contractors, I told them in 2017, my goal was them to call me and say, quit sending us people. We're full. And who on earth's going to do that? So I told them that was my goal. This past summer, I'm getting close.
Yeah.
We maxed out capacity with multiple contractors.
That's
with
great.
our youth involvement that we had working through the summer months. So we're making a huge impact. And I tell everybody across the country, I don't own it. I want you to use it.
Yeah.
And whatever I've been able to do in North Carolina, take it, use it, implement it. I'll come help you. Pick with our people a lot and say, just cover my fuel. Cover my fuel. I'll come help you. And I mean that in whole humble honesty. I mean that, because our industry can make a difference in a ton of lives across the country.
Yeah. So
I want the youth to understand. And I've been able to do that with videos and craziness that I do in North Carolina, and keeping the youth, excited about giving us a try. But that's available across this whole country.
Yeah.
The same thing that I've been trying to do and have done is available here in New York. It's available. All we got to do is introduce it and show and get them excited.
Yeah, so, and share some of those best practices and yeah.
Yes, sir. So our youth are very impactful, and I used to love to say this, and now I do middle school events. I never thought I'd go down and start, hey, what have we been in middle school? But that 8th grader is signing up for his high school courses while he's in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
Why in the world can I not go and impact and give that student an opportunity? Say, hey, look, this is what we've got waiting for you.
Yeah.
Give us a try. Put a trowel in their hand. Let them lay a brick. Just anything, just to get them. Hey, I need to think about that. So we've been able to take that down now, where we've got a curriculum for the middle school that we use across North Carolina. It works great. It's an introduction. It's called TY54 Exploring Masonry. So it gets that student a 2-week exploratory course of what is it like to be in masonry, and that's worked really well. So
that's great.
If you'd asked me that 7-8 years ago, I'd have said, "Are you crazy?" And now I'm like, "Heck yeah!" And so we're looking at all sorts of opportunities to get that student, because the way I explained it to our masonry contractors, today where that student's at when they're in high school.
Yeah.
When they graduate, are you going to be able to find them? How are you going to find them?
Yeah.
Today, you can actually go to the school.
Right.
You can actually speak to the class. You can get involved with what they're doing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But when they graduate, where are you going to find them?
Yeah. You got to you got to have you got to make that impression young, right?
Exactly. So I tell our mason contractors, we started an adopt a school process where I gave every mason contractor a high school that they were responsible for, and you have to go to that high school. And
That's
I had
great.
some,
I
I had
love
some
that.
guys, one guy in particular, he lived 1 mile from the high school that he was that I voluntold him that he was
I love
adopted.
that.
And he lived 1 mile, and he had never been to that high school, and they had a masonry program.
No kidding.
And now he's hired multiple students full time out of that program, out of that masonry program, when they've graduated high school.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's just
incredible.
things like that. You've got to get involved.
Yep.
You have to go to those schools. You have to knock on their door before they'll knock on yours.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to teach our masonry contractors, as well as get our youth excited.
Yeah.
So it's a dual process, which goes back to where I was in industry. I saw everything on the industry side.
Yeah.
You're worried about your AR. You're
Yeah.
You're worried. There's a lot
Yeah.
you're worried about.
Yeah.
You're not worried about taking 2 hours and going down and making an impact and recruiting for the next 5 years for your company.
Yeah.
You're worried about your AR today. You're worried about, you got to make payroll.
Yeah.
So getting that, and then getting the educational side where they have a adopted program that can be school implemented and run.
Yeah.
And by the industry. So
Well,
it's
you're
worked
creating
great.
the ecosystem really that allows you to have the future workforce kind of working through the process, and I think that's
Correct.
a
So
testament
it's helped a lot.
yeah,
It's helped
that's
a
awesome.
lot. Is it perfect? Heck no.
no,
Can I improve? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I want to make it bigger? Yes.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
but it's doing it. You
Yep.
have to do it, and luckily we've been able to do it in North Carolina. We've impacted a ton of young people. We've got a ton of young people coming to our trade.
Yeah.
I'll give you one story, and this will put it in perspective. When I was teaching, and I used to use this and I use it with our instructors now. I hear it all the time. We're just a dumping ground. The guidance counselor just put us whoever they want. We're a dumping. Well, how in the heck? There's this nasty school down in Alabama in Tuscaloosa that's got a pretty dang good football team and has had for a long time. Did they allow their guidance people to go and put players on their team, or do they go recruit those players? At the end of the day, you can go recruit as an instructor just as easy as they can put someone in your class.
Yeah.
So I said, golly, I got to get my test scores up, because hey, these boys are like me, they can't take a test, and we're judged on the growth of our test scores. Can you believe that? And so I said, I've got to get my test scores up. So in North Carolina, the band is an honors course. So a lot of your higher level academic students are in the band, and the band is very structured. I have a ton of respect for the band programs across the country, because I got to see it firsthand. They practice every day after school. They go to the competitions. They're there at every football game. They're just bam, bam. They're just structured. They're great, and they're higher level achieving academic students. A lot of them are. Yeah. So I made the band director. He and I become friends, and I voluntold him a couple things that I wanted him to do, and I said, "Will you allow me to come in for 5 minutes during your fourth period?" I had fourth period planning. Allow me 5 minutes to come in and speak to your students. He said, "Absolutely." He said, "I'll take attendance and I'll get I'll get things started." Yeah, absolutely. So I went in the band room, and I started speaking to the students. I said, "Hey, my name's Ryan Shaver. I teach masonry, which is down in the building that you've never been in." I said, "It's on this campus, but it's not connected to the main structure." I said, "So you have to walk, and I'd start with them that way. And I'd teach them, tell them about masonry, what we were about. I recruited 2 of my 8 national champions out of the band.
No kidding.
While I was in school.
That's incredible.
So that being said, now both of them are structural engineers, and they design with masonry. And I tell them, and I pick with them, I think the world of both of them. They're great. But one of them was the drum major in the band. Yep. And I tell him, he's got his stamp now. He's structural, and both of them are. And I pick with them all the time. And I say, "Look, I'll write your letters, you stamp it. Because I don't want you giving me no nonsense. 2 number 7s ever sell. I got a bond beam every 2 foot." I said, "I don't want all that crap." So I pick with them all the time. And I tell them, I said, if I ever see you design with wood, I will kill you. And they're great. So
Yeah.
now they're both designing with masonry, and
And
it's great. So
I mean, that's amazing to have people like that. Those are the people that obviously have such influence over the buildings we're building, and
correct.
can massively impact the masonry industry. So, whether they end up as masons themselves, having that core and that fundamental of going through the masonry program, understand what it's all about, so they can, I think keep that in mind as they design for the future. I think that's huge for the industry.
And at the end of the day, I'll go back to what I said. I have a job for every student in my class.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter where you're at, what your academic level is. Mine was terrible.
Yep.
My instructor had a job for me, and it paid off.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is those two young men are just examples of how they had no knowledge of masonry, didn't even know they wanted to be in. They were smart, academically gifted,
Yeah.
and by taking masonry, it put them on a path of, hey, I think I like this, and it put them on an engineering pathway.
Yep.
Where both of them graduated NC State, both of them have their masters from
That's
NC
amazing.
State, and both of them are structural engineers with their stamp.
That's awesome.
So it's impactful.
Yeah.
And if our people in the industry will understand that, the impact we can make for those students, and give them that direction while we can find them, while
Yeah.
we can go see them, it benefits us all as an industry.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to shift over and talk a little bit about, so you got these students that come through your program, they end up on job sites, right? And so as we implement technology and we take a mule and we bring it to a job site, right? And we teach a mason for the first time. Obviously, one of the first things we need to do is teach them about the technology, get their buy-in, and help them understand the why the mule is there, what it can do for them, and then how to use the tool successfully, right? And that's both health and safety impact. It's, having setup and operational success on the job site with the mule, and then ultimately increasing productivity and, reducing schedule and all the wins that come with it. So I want to talk a little bit about team engagements, right? So we show up with a mule, and you've had a chance to play with it a little bit, but it's still a relatively new tool in many areas of the country. Now we got a number of them going in the Carolinas, which I love to see, and I think that hopefully that will continue to grow the success that we're having down there. What are some of your thoughts on ways to approach the teams with a mule? So we show up with a mule, we teach a team. Like, what are some thoughts on how we can build that team engagement? Just things we can do, or just open dialogue. Based on your experience, what you've seen, what you've now played with the mule, and how do we get people to understand the value and then buy into the use of the technology?
When you're working with a team, especially a crew, because I've been on a crew, run a crew, I know the crew, you got to look at your levels of who's on that crew.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a quick story, and it'll make sense after I give you this quick story of how I think you should approach. So I had an older gentleman that was nearing retirement, and he taught me a lot when I was young during the summers, a ton. And then advance on in the years, and I was now the foreman over the job, and he was working under me. And I never looked at him as looked at anybody as working under me. They're working with me.
Right.
So we got a new toolbox, and I'll share this. It was one of them big weather guard.
Yeah.
Man, it was super nice. We were tickled to death. Got a new toolbox. It had 2 hydraulic hinges.
Yep.
And all you had to do was just shut it real slow, and when you heard it click, that was it. And then when you pulled the lever, it opened up just as smooth and all. Well, his old toolbox, you slam,
Right.
and you slam. So he got over there, he put all the tools in the new box, the end of the day, put everything in the new box, and he tried to slam it. And when he slammed it, it eased back up, because those hydraulic, it eased back up just nice. He said, "What's wrong with this?" And he slammed. He tried to slam it again. It eased back up. And I went over to him. I said, "Look," I said, "things have changed." And I said, "For the better." I said, "Watch this." And so I eased that down, and it clicked. And I said, "Now it's shut and locked." And I said, "You don't have to worry about slamming it. You don't worry about having to hold the lid up when you go in there to get something out of it." I said, "It's great." He said, "Well, I'll be darned." He said, "That is pretty cool, isn't it?" So if I would have approached him in a different way, instead of the way I approached him, because he was seasoned.
Yeah.
He taught me when I was 16 years old how to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I approached him and said, "Hey, hold tight. Let me show you something." And so I think if our team, when we bring in new things, iPads, a lot of our guys, when we bring in anything new to a seasoned person, it's not move out of the way. This is better. I want to teach. It's, hey, I want to show you something that you're going to love,
right?
And it's going to benefit you. And here's why. So I've had to learn that as I've got older. I had to learn it when I was teaching.
Yeah.
If you want to learn how to have patience, teach.
Yeah.
Because teaching will teach you patience.
Yeah.
And I used to tell a lot of the young men, I'm the most uneducated educator you're ever going to have. But by God, I'm going to teach you how to do something. And I'm going to, when I get done with you, I want you to be able to take this and benefit from it.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah.
I want you to be successful. What other teachers? I mean, I want you to be better than me.
Yeah.
That's my goal for you, And it always was. I wanted that student to be better than me. And so I think as a team, especially on a job site, when we introduce something new, something that most definitely is impactful and better, is how we approach that introduction to that.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that teaching. And then I had to learn that, especially with the aging guys, and now I'm getting up there where I've got the age and the guys are younger. And I used to pick a lot. I still do. I love to have, if we're going to be on a job, we're going to be on that job more together than we are going to be with our family.
Yeah.
Okay? So we need to have a little bit of
You
fun,
gotta have fun.
and we need to enjoy being with each other.
No question.
So I try to think about that as well. I would rather that student laugh at me. I don't care if they laugh. And I tell them, I pick all the time. I say, hey, look, I don't want you to outlay me. Just lay one every time I do. If I lay a block, you lay a block. If I lay a brick, you lay a brick. And now that I've got older, I say, hey, guys, y'all doing great. I'm going to go get you some more brick. I'm going to get you some more mortar.
Right.
Y'all are doing great. I'll be right back. You just keep doing it. So it's in how you approach how you want them to take in what you're trying to teach.
And it's interesting. One of the things that we've seen out there training, thousands of masons around the country now over many years, I think getting that engagement is key. And there's different people. There's different types of people at different stages of their career, and what resonates with them is going to be a little different. Some of the older guys, they might be more resistant to technology. We need to be slower. We need to be more patient. We need to help get them more comfortable with just the fact of hitting the button and letting the mule do the work and not trying to force it through. And and I think that what we've found is it takes a little longer for them to get comfortable, but once they do get comfortable, some of the best conversations I've had with Masons is and the most rewarding are when they finally get comfortable with it, use it for a few days, and then they come have a conversation with you and they say, look, I know I was resistant to this at first, but man, I feel so much better today. I had one story where a guy said, he came to us after a few days and he said, I didn't want to use it at first, but he goes, yesterday, I got to tell you, every day, after work, I usually go to the grocery store with my wife and she walks through and I sit down on the bench because I'm wiped. He goes, yesterday I got to walk the whole store with her. He goes, I felt great. And he said, the mule made that possible. And so they start to realize the impact on their body, and they have that appreciation. And so, I think we can resonate with them from a health and safety standpoint, from helping their bodies and everything. And then you've got the younger people that want to just go, right? And they get in the industry and they're successful and they're strong and they love production and they love just getting it done. And so getting them to slow down and understand that, look, you can do this every day, but it's going to take a toll on your body. And so if you take a moment and look at the new technology and try to adopt that, those conversations take a little while, and I think that we're always looking for ways on how to better engage them. And some people get it, they love it, the health and safety. Other people are just like, no, this thing's slowing me down. I just want to go. I want to do it. And so we're trying to figure out how do we resonate with them? How do we help them see how this can help them go faster if they would take a moment to adopt it? I don't know. Any thoughts on how to adopt, how to engage that people at those stages of their work?
Yeah,
life?
so that's going to be, because I used to be that person.
Yeah.
That person you're describing was who I used to be. And now I say, hey, grab the other side of that. Let's lift this and take, age comes with wisdom.
Yeah.
All right. and trying to show the younger people, and I try my best to do that. Don't be dumb like me. And I'll tell them, don't be dumb like me. Let me show you. Grab that side. Let's work together. So I think if we put that towards them as, yeah, you have the strength, you have the youth, you have the energy, but I got a little bit more up here because I've been where you're at, and I want to show you and tell you and explain something. Hold tight. This will work for you in the long run.
Yeah.
And I think if we explain that in that fashion to them, that we're not trying to hold them back, we're not trying to push them down, we're just trying to talk about the long run. Man, I used to could pour the block in the wall and loved it.
Yeah.
And now I poured the block in the wall Saturday and Sunday morning before church. I had to get my wife to help me get up.
Yeah.
Hey, help me up.
Yeah.
I think just getting them to understand the impact that we're going to save your body from having in the long haul is well worth listening to what we're saying right this moment.
Yeah, it's when you're young, it's hard to have that perspective. I heard a masonry trainer tell me one time that he tells his students, he says, look, he goes, it's an amazing industry, you get out of it what you put into it. He goes, but at the end of the day, you got to remember you are trading your body for a paycheck, and in a lot of ways, it's going to have a toll on your body. And I think I heard that one time, and it resonated with me a little bit because I think through technology, we can help that. Like, of course you're out there, you're using your muscles, you're using body. That's part of what you do every day. But I think especially as we get into the bigger, heavier materials, we can do it a little bit smarter. We can leverage technology so that we can be in the trade longer. And at the end of the day, when you do retire, when you do, hang up the trowel for you want to be able to have enough, I guess, strength and energy to spend time with your grandkids and spend time with, your family and the people you love, and not, have to pay the penalty of being in the trade, right? And that's part of what we hope the mule and what we hope our technology can provide. So
yeah, absolutely.
So, so we talked a little bit about kind of engaging the teams. I want to talk about the contractor's perspective with the mule, right? Because I think we are a new tool. We continue to have a ton of success with contractors, and are seeing greater and greater adoption. But there's still a lot of people in the industry that they haven't adopted, right? They're still kind of on the fence. What is your perspective, and some of this maybe just, I don't know how you view things or things you hear, but some of the big challenges that maybe prevent people from adopting new technology like the mule. What are the big obstacles that you think the contractors are struggling with in their mind when they look at, hey, I got this new thing, right? And it probably was similar thought concepts when people went from frame scaffolding to hydraulic scaffolding, or went from old methods of mixing to new methods of mixing. Whatever that technology transition was, it's probably similar with the mule. But I'm curious, what are some of the big obstacles that you think are in these contractors' minds when they think about adopting the mule?
Well, I think the first obstacle I would put out there that I would see a lot of contractors having, especially if they're multi-generational. Well, my daddy didn't do that. My granddaddy did that. He'd and it goes all the way back to a multi-generational thing. But your guys that are more on the forefront, meaning they're thinking about the impact, the productivity increase. It's not just because it's how my daddy did it and how my granddaddy did it and how they, that's where you get into like your scaffolding, like you mentioned, buck scaffolding, frames, we call it bucks down in the South. So your buck scaffolding, everybody, that's what, and then man, all of a sudden we back in the day, we got these things called Morgan towers, and it was a crank up, and we were, holy cow, and the first time we used it, everything was right there at your waist. You had plenty of platform to stage on. Yeah, man, it was great. And but we fought it before we used it. Yep. And the reason we fought it was possibly could have been some ignorance. And so all I'm saying to that is it depends on a lot of that multi-generational, how they were brought up in the industry. Now we've got a lot of great new younger leaders that see that beneficial factor and are implementing that in the companies, and that is great. We want to show all the respect to the guys that taught me. Like I was giving you the toolbox story, that guy that taught me, and how I was able to, hey, hold tight, let me show you something. And I think if we take that approach with our masonry contractors, depending on their leadership lineage and how it impacts them, that can be instrumental. I love to see our younger masonry leaders. In fact, we're doing an article this month for our newsletter, but our younger masonry leaders, give me just like the same question you asked me.
Yeah.
What's your vision for the future?
Yeah.
Tell it to me. And then let's see how we can make that happen, So I think if we start involving our younger people, generational people, into some of those decisions, and get their, hey, what are you thinking? Talk to me.
Yeah.
And I had a guy, he asked me, this has been 6 months ago, he said, where do you see the North Carolina Masonry Contractors Association in 5 years?
Yeah.
And he's a younger guy. And I looked at him and I called his name, and I see, and I called his name, working for the North Carolina, and it just blew him out of the water. He wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm ready to hire you. You ready to come with us? And it just, it threw him. He was trying to get me, threw off a little bit, but I threw it right back on him and said, I anticipate, and I called his name, working for the North Carolina Masonry Contractors Association.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think if we take that approach with our masonry contractors, what's your history?
Yep.
And yes, you've done great. You've been highly successful. You've been impactful in our industry. What's your next generation of leaders?
Yeah.
And let's get their vision, and let's start working with them on what we see for the future of our industry and how we can impact for the good of our industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, one of the things, like we're always evolving new ways to use the mule. And one of the things that gives us the most pride is when, the mule is a tool, and when we get a contractor to try it. And then they transition from, I don't know if this thing's going to work, to, okay, I'm starting to see it, to, man, we feel better, to, okay, how do we get more productivity out of it, to, okay, this is how we're doing business, right? And as the contractors go through that transition, which sometimes the hardest part is getting them started, but when they start to own it like their own, and they're coming up with ideas on how to implement it, how to use it, how to plan for it, how to bid with it, that's the best thing that you could ever ask for as a technology developer, as a manufacturer, as a company that's trying to bring a new technology into the industry. We love seeing that, and I think that for us, one of the biggest challenges is getting people to take that first step. Right? They have all these fears of, well, what if I rent it and it doesn't work and it costs me money? What if I buy it and I don't get the ROI? What if my guys don't adopt it? They have all these questions and concerns, and those are all fears that are based on reality to some level, because those all could happen. But I think as any new process, right, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of evolution in the industry over the years, and new processes are implemented all the time. As any new process or new tool is implemented, you got to figure out how to make it your own, right? You got to figure out how to bring it into your team, get the engagement, and then how to get the most out of it. And with the mule, I think it's no different. We talk a little bit about productivity and how to really take advantage of the mule, you need to set up differently, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but what would prevent a mason from laying 1,000 blocks a day? And that may sound ridiculous, but from our perspective, there's kind of two things at its core. One, fatigue, right? So you get tired, you're just not going to put that many blocks in the wall at the end of the day, or you do it and you do it one day and then you're on the couch the next day, right? And two is logistics. It's setup, it's process. It's, hey, I got windows and rebar and I don't have enough room to run because I'm doing little piers, or I'm doing cut up work, and so or I don't have enough mortar, I don't have enough grout. There's all sorts of things that just are the natural part of logistics and planning. But for us, the mule takes fatigue out of the picture. Right? So now we can eliminate fatigue. We can keep people feeling good. We can keep them laying consistently Monday to Friday. We can keep them laying all day long. So once you have a tool in your hands, the question is, what are you going to do with it? Right? So how do you plan? How do you think differently? And how do you execute with that tool to take advantage of it? And so, I think we're always trying to deal with these fears and objections. I don't know. I mean, have you seen other products, other things that have been able to get implemented faster or more successfully because of the way they implemented it? Or, how do you deal with the contractors that have all these, objections and fears?
So I've seen, and I'll answer your question as simple as I can. It's a tell me it's back in the day we used to say, "Show me, don't tell me."
Yeah,
You know,
they're
so
all
if
from
I
Missouri,
show
right?
you
Is that
something,
what they say? All Masons are from Missouri, right?
yeah.
Where they say you got to show
And
me.
so, one of my mentors on the job, I'll never forget this. You know, I was telling him, man, we could do this, and then we could. Man, I'm telling you, if we had, you know, and I kept, I'm telling you, if I had, to,
Yeah.
and he said, look, you're making tons of mistakes in every sentence you're saying. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, you keep saying, I'm telling you. He said, show me.
Yeah.
He said, don't tell me, show me.
Yeah.
Show me one time what you're saying and what you're telling, and I'll believe you. And since that moment, I've tried to do that. I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
I want to tell, we're going to talk about it while we're doing it. But remember, when I go back to how we impact those students, I'm not going to tell you about our industry. I'm going to show you our industry.
Yeah.
So if we show that benefit and actually implement that benefit with the hands, then the telling part doesn't need to happen. The showing happened, which was the sale of the benefit.
Yeah. And that makes a ton of sense. And I think for us, I totally believe in that. And I think we try, you know, where we can to do demos, to be hands-on, because that's what it takes, right? The most impactful, I can go into any contractor in the country and walk through a PowerPoint and show them videos. That is way less impactful than if we show up with a mule, right? And if you show up with a mule and they get their hands on it, it's a game changer because they see it. You know, and I think we were on this job recently, and I think I was sharing with you, you know, internationally, we had an opportunity to work with a company, and really exciting. And one of the fun things about watching the implementation process is, you know, we went in, and in the first day, we showed them how to use the mule, right? And in less than an hour, a bunch of people, you know, English was not their first language, were using the mule, and they were successful with it. But the magic was over the following 3-4 days that we were there kind of observing and coaching and educating, we spent most of the time talking about how to optimize their process and how to think a little bit differently to take advantage of the tool, because they started to teach each other, and every day they would just keep using it, and they get more and more comfortable. And when they'd have something that was a little hiccup or, you know, didn't behave they want, then we'd step in and we'd, you know, show them the next thing. Oh yeah, this is how you tweak it. And that kind of evolutionary process was really cool to see, because they basically were able to, you know, like 6x their production, you know, from what they originally had, because they started to adopt it, because we were able to show them the data and say, hey, look, you know, when you're moving the block, it's going well. The opportunity here is every time you see a flat line in the data, you know, if we can just figure out how to move the mule or have another area set up or plan to keep the mule running, now all of a sudden we can start to take advantage of the fact that we can just keep this thing running all day long, and you can see an increase in productivity. And so it's really cool. It's really, you know, fun and impactful. But for us, the big thing is we want to afford as many opportunities as possible for people to get their hands on the mule, whether it's demos, whether it's just, you know, find a way to work with us, go see it at a training center. We have mules in different training centers around the country, and you know, hopefully just experience it. And we have a customer success team. We've got a team here that wants to talk about ways to implement it, to take advantage of it, and you know, see the long-term benefits. Because at the end of the day, for us, the biggest pride we have is if the industry can grow because of the technology that we're able to provide, right? If people can feel better at the end of their careers, if we can prevent injuries, keep people working, and you know, ultimately see the masonry industry thrive. That's really the big win for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree totally.
Yeah. So look, I you know, I just want to wrap up and say thank you so much again for spending time with us. We love the feedback. We love hearing about the success you've had in the North Carolina area, as well as the impact that you're having. You know, just I think on behalf of the industry, thank you for everything you're doing. It's amazing. You're a phenomenal leader out there, I think, helping to educate and grow the industry. And, you know, we just appreciate the opportunity to come here and educate my team and, you know, teach us a little bit about how we can be better partners with the industry and how we can provide a better tool to help the industry grow. So,
well, Scott, I thank you for having me up, and I'll end with this. And I tell a lot of our students that I was really, really, really smart in school, really smart. And they'll look at me and say, that's crazy. I know he's lying. You know, I said, I married the valedictorian. Who's smarter, me or her?
yeah.
I am.
That's right.
So what I'm trying to say is the impact that we can make with our students is very beneficial, and it'll do you good to impact the next generation. I tell our mason contractors that all the time. You're the one that's going to get the blessing out of it because it feels good.
Yeah.
To go and show what you know, what somebody took the time to teach you 35, 40 years ago, like me, 30 plus years ago. Somebody took the time to show me what I'm able to show someone else now.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all y'all are doing. Every event that we're able to showcase you at, and then show our youth the impact that technology can have and how we have arrived to that in the course of our industry. From an old wheelbarrow with a metal wheel with a mortar hoe, all the way up to everything we have, the hydraulic mixers, hydrostatic scaffolding, the mule attached to that. I mean, we came so far, and it's still such a great trade.
Yeah.
So thank you for what your team does, and thank you for what y'all do to support us in the field.
Yeah. Well, thank you. All right.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.
All right, so